At family dinner, my sister brought her new boyfriend, and everyone kept staring at me. When he asked about my job, Mom snapped, "Don't humiliate us." Everyone laughed. My sister said, "Just lie, so you don't sound pathetic." I smiled. Then their faces went white. I'd spent years quietly enduring my family's jokes, always the odd one out. But the night my sister got engaged, their casual cruelty finally pushed me to my limit, and I decided I was done being quiet. The air in the dining room that night felt thick, not with good cheer, but with something unspoken and vaguely hostile. Every smile felt like a shield, every laugh a little too forced. I probably should have figured it out a long time ago, when people stop seeing you as family and start treating you like an outsider. It doesn't always happen with a big fight or a dramatic blow-up. Sometimes it happens slowly, casually, with a passing insult that's supposed to be just a joke, a side comment that gets a few polite chuckles, and a dinner table full of familiar faces that suddenly feels unfamiliar. The worst part? You smile through it. Not because you're okay, but because you're trying not to show them they got to you. My name's Ethan. I'm 28, and I've never really fit into my family. Not because I'm some black sheep with a criminal record or a wild past. I just took a different path than the one they expected. I didn't go to a fancy college, didn't land a high-paying job in finance or law like my older brother, Caleb, and definitely didn't become the walking family trophy like my sister, Chloe. She's 26, just 2 years younger than me, and somehow became both my mom's favorite and my dad's echo chamber. She followed the family script to the letter: honors student, business degree, engaged to a guy from a respectable family, and now works some mid-tier marketing job that gets treated like she's personally reinventing capitalism. Meanwhile, I run an online antique restoration business. I started it myself, right out of my garage. And yeah, it's not glamorous, but it's mine. I take forgotten things, broken things, and bring them back to life. Chairs, clocks, old radios, even vintage arcade cabinets. You'd be surprised how much people will pay to restore a memory. But to my family, that's not a real job. It's just a hobby I haven't grown out of. Dinner that night was supposed to be a casual family catch-up at my parents' house, something we did every couple of months. Dad grilled steaks. Mom made her usual 2 dry lasagnas for backup. And Caleb brought his wife and 2 kids, who immediately took over the living room with iPads and goldfish crackers. I showed up on time, brought a bottle of wine, and even a handmade centerpiece. I thought Mom might like a vintage-style table runner with polished brass napkin rings I'd restored from an old estate sale. She took one look at it, smiled tight, and said, "That's sweet, honey, but we don't really do that rustic look anymore." I brushed it off. I've gotten good at brushing things off. But then Chloe walked in and everything shifted. She made an entrance like she was walking into a movie premiere. Flashing smiles, tossing her hair, holding the hand of some guy none of us had met before. He looked like he'd been plucked straight from an Instagram ad for cologne. Tall, sharp jawline, designer shoes that probably cost more than my car's monthly insurance. Chloe practically glowed, introducing him. "Everyone, this is Liam. He's a consultant. We met at a networking event last month." A consultant? Of course. No one ever really knows what consultants do, but it sounds expensive. So, my parents were immediately impressed. "Oh, how wonderful," Mom gushed, leaning in for a double cheek kiss. "It's so nice to finally meet someone Chloe actually brings home. That means something, you know." Dad shook his hand and clapped him on the back like they'd known each other for years. Caleb gave him a half-smile while juggling his toddler. Even the kids looked up from their iPads for a second before getting bored again. I stood up, smiled politely, extended my hand. "Ethan, older brother. Good to meet you." Liam shook it and nodded. "Nice to meet you too, man. I've heard a little about you." I raised an eyebrow. "All good things, I hope." Chloe laughed a little too loud. "We'll see after tonight." It was just a comment. Small, easy to ignore, so I laughed too, though my stomach twisted a little. I chalked it up to sibling teasing. Nothing new. We all sat down to eat. The table was full. Caleb and his wife on one end, Mom and Dad across from each other, and Chloe and Liam sitting right next to me. As we passed around dishes and tried to make polite conversation, I noticed something weird. Every time Liam said something, some casual story about flying to Dallas for a client meeting or some book he was in the middle of writing, because apparently everyone writes a book now, the family would light up, laugh, ask questions, engage. When I chimed in with a comment about a restoration I was working on for a collector in rural Virginia or a custom job I did for a film set, there'd be this pause like someone hit the mute button. Then someone would redirect the conversation, ask Liam another question, or shift to Chloe's recent promotion. It was subtle, but not subtle enough to miss. I focused on my plate, chewing slower, saying less. I've learned to read the room still. Part of me held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, I was imagining it. That hope vanished when Liam, halfway through dinner, turned to me and asked, "So, Ethan, what do you do for work?" I didn't even get a full breath in. Before I could speak, Mom cut in with a tight smile. "Oh, don't ask him that, dear. He'll go on forever about it. You don't want to hear about rust and paint and tools." Everyone chuckled. Caleb gave a low snort. "Unless you're looking for a new coffee table from 1974, then maybe." Chloe, without missing a beat, sipped her wine and said, "Maybe lie this time so you don't sound so pathetic. Just say you're in design or something." I froze. The room laughed again quietly, like they knew it was mean, but figured it was all in good fun. Liam looked uncomfortable, but not enough to say anything. My hands tightened under the table. I looked around, waiting for someone, anyone, to say it was too far, to tell her to stop. No one did. I forced a smile. The same one I perfected over years of being the disappointment. "Sure," I said, my voice light. "Let's go with design. Sounds more mysterious." More chuckles. My dad cleared his throat and asked Liam something about the stock market. Just like that, I was erased again. But I wasn't really smiling. I was calculating. And while they all laughed and passed the garlic bread, none of them noticed the shift in my eyes, the flicker behind my smile, the slow, subtle breath I took as something inside me, something I'd kept quiet for far too long, finally stood up. Because this wasn't just dinner anymore. This was going to be the last time they laughed at me without consequence. And they didn't even see it coming. I didn't sleep much that night. I left dinner early, said I had a client meeting in the morning, a lie, and drove around the city for an hour with the windows down and no music playing. Just thinking, letting the words repeat in my head like they were stuck on some broken record. Maybe lie this time so you don't sound so pathetic. I'd been called a lot of things over the years. Too quiet, too sensitive, a dreamer, weird, even disappointment. Once, though my mom never actually said it out loud, she just said she wished I was more like Chloe or more stable like Caleb. Which, let's be honest, is just the polite way of saying, you're not what I wanted. But that night, that was new. That was direct. That was humiliating. And what burned the most wasn't just Chloe's comment. It wasn't even that everyone laughed like she was hosting open mic night. What got to me, really got to me, was how normal it felt to them. How casual. Like that was just my role now, the guy at the table they could dunk on to make themselves feel better. I started to replay all the little moments from the past few years. The holidays where they'd forget to mention the changed dinner time. The birthdays where I got gas station gift cards while Chloe got jewelry. The way Caleb always acted like I lived in a basement somewhere, even though I own my own house. Every moment I brushed off, laughed off, told myself wasn't worth making a scene over. I saw them differently now, like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were all part of the same picture. And the picture looked a lot like someone being pushed out of their own family. So yeah, something changed that night. I didn't scream. I didn't text anyone some big dramatic message. I just stopped hoping. I stopped waiting for them to see me, to understand me, to treat me like I mattered. And as messed up as it sounds, there was something weirdly freeing about that. But life went on, at least for a few weeks. I went back to work. A few new commissions rolled in. One from a collector restoring 1960s jukeboxes. Another from a boutique hotel downtown that wanted their entire lobby redone in mid-century pieces. The kind of jobs I used to want to tell my family about. The kind of thing I used to be proud of. This time I said nothing. Until the text came. "MO dinner next Sunday. Everyone's coming." Liam's proposing and wants the family there. That was it. No, how are you? No, hope you're free. Just a statement, like I was a seat on the guest list, not a person. I stared at the screen for a full minute. It was so them, so Chloe, to make it into a performance. Of course, he was proposing with the whole family there. Of course, there'd be photos, speeches, and champagne. I could already picture the captions. She said yes. Our little girl all grown up. So lucky to welcome Liam to the family. And I'd be there in the background, half visible, probably holding someone's coat. I almost didn't go. I really thought about just vanishing, saying nothing. Skipping town for a weekend. But something held me back. Not curiosity, not guilt, just the need to see it. To finally confirm to myself that whatever connection we had left was long gone. Sunday came, and this time I dressed up, not in some desperate attempt to impress them, just enough to feel like I was in control. Clean black button-down, pressed slacks, a new watch I bought for myself 6 months ago, but never worn. I even styled my hair, which for me was borderline revolutionary. When I walked in, I was 10 minutes early. Caleb was already there, same as always. His wife nodded at me and quickly turned back to her phone. The kids were on the couch watching some cartoon on full blast. My dad was outside grilling, and my mom was in the kitchen directing everyone like she was running a wedding. Nothing new. Then Chloe walked in, glowing like a stage light. Liam right behind her. She wore this long, deep green dress like she was about to attend an awards show. And he had on a tailored navy blazer and the same overconfident smirk as last time. They made a beeline for the living room, immediately soaking up compliments. I watched it all from the side. I didn't even try to insert myself. Dinner started awkwardly, the usual small talk. Caleb droned on about his company's new software rollout. Mom bragged about the flower arrangements she'd chosen. Dad kept trying to tell Liam how to grill the right way, and Liam laughed along, even though I could tell he had zero interest. Then it happened. Chloe stood up, tapped her glass with a spoon, and said, Okay, everyone, before we eat dessert, Liam has something he wants to say. Gasps, claps. The kids looked up. My mom's eyes already filled with tears like she'd rehearsed them. Liam stood, pulled a little box from his blazer, and started some speech about love and fate and how he'd known since their first date. Then he turned to Chloe, got down on one knee, and popped the question. She squealed, said yes. They kissed. Everyone exploded in cheers. Champagne popped. My mom hugged them both like she'd just won the lottery. Caleb actually clapped like he was at a game. I stayed seated, smiled, clapped once, said congrats when it felt appropriate. Then Liam did something unexpected. He turned to me. I know we haven't talked much, Ethan, he said. But I hope I'll get to know you better. Chloe says you're super creative and, you do cool stuff with furniture. I blinked. Chloe looked mildly uncomfortable but said nothing. I nodded slowly. Yeah, something like that. Liam gave me this sheepish smile, then glanced at Chloe. She told me you made a chest for a museum once. That sounds pretty impressive. That made Chloe snap into action. Oh, he's exaggerating. It was just a small piece for a local exhibit. Nothing major. My mom chimed in. Yes, let's not confuse a display with a permanent feature, but it's sweet of you to show interest, Liam. They both laughed. And that was it. That was the moment. Something inside me cracked. Because it wasn't just about the work. It wasn't just about being underestimated. It was about how they did it. Always with a smile. Always with concern or corrections. Always twisting every decent thing I did into something laughable, dismissible. Like, even when a stranger tried to give me credit, they couldn't allow it. I stood up calmly. My fork clicked against my plate. Actually, I said, voice even. It was for a museum, a private collection curated exhibit. They hired me to restore a 19th century writing desk that had belonged to a state senator. It was the centerpiece of the entire room. The room went quiet. Chloe blinked. Well, yeah, but... And last week, I cut in. I signed a contract with a hotel chain that's renovating 7 properties to vintage themes. I'll be handling the custom restorations for all of them. So, it's not just a hobby. The silence grew thicker. Liam looked vaguely impressed. Caleb looked mildly irritated, like I'd ruined the vibe. My dad shifted in his seat. My mom gave me that brutal smile I knew too well. The one that meant she'd say something passive-aggressive in 3, 2. Well, we're happy for you, honey, she said. But tonight's about Chloe. Let's not derail the celebration. I let that sink in. Then I turned to Chloe. You ever wonder, I asked, why you can't talk about me without adding a little insult after every sentence? Chloe raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Maybe lie this time so you don't sound pathetic, I quoted. Ring a bell. Her cheeks flushed. It was a joke. No, I said, taking a step back. It wasn't. It never is. Not when it comes from you. Not when it comes from any of you. Mom stood up now, sensing things had shifted. Ethan, let's not start drama. I met her eyes. No, let's finally have it. I took a breath. I'm done pretending like I don't hear what you really think. I'm done playing the silent, polite, invisible son who smiles while you all chip away at whatever's left of my self-respect. You don't get to laugh at me, talk down to me, rewrite my life in front of strangers, and then expect me to show up and clap when you tell me to. My voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Chloe scoffed. Wow. Okay, someone's having a meltdown. I turned to her slowly. You've spent your whole life building a pedestal out of praise and favoritism, and somehow still managed to look down on everyone from it. I hope Liam likes the view. She froze. Even Liam looked caught off guard. I turned toward the door. I'm leaving. And don't worry, I won't embarrass you again. Not by showing up, and definitely not by being myself. And then, right as I reached for my coat, my mom said something I'll never forget. Well, don't expect to be included in the wedding if you can't behave like an adult. I froze, slowly turned, and the look I gave her must have said everything I didn't need to, because in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. But I said nothing. I just opened the door, stepped outside, and walked into the cold air like I was finally breathing again. And none of them knew that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the steering wheel. I didn't even call a friend to vent about it. I just sat there gripping the wheel, engine humming quietly under me, staring out at the dark suburban street in front of my parents' house. Their porch light glowed soft yellow behind me like a spotlight on a stage I just walked off. I felt hollow. That's the thing about hitting your emotional limit. It doesn't always look like a breakdown. Sometimes it's numbness. Sometimes it's just quiet, like your body and your mind have both shut down to stop you from falling apart in public. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on pavement and my breath catching every once in a while when my thoughts tried to wander back to that moment. Don't expect to be included in the wedding. As if I was some child who needed to be taught a lesson. My own mother had essentially told me I was replaceable. And the worst part? I kind of believed her. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, woke up, brewed coffee, ignored my phone, walked into my workshop, and stared blankly at the antique armoire I'd been meaning to finish refinishing. I had orders, emails, even a couple of voicemail messages from past clients. One of them excitedly told me she'd referred me to a magazine that was writing a piece on vintage furniture design. But I didn't care. I felt like everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, suddenly didn't matter. Like it was all paper thin the moment my family dismissed it with a joke. What good was creating beautiful things if the people who were supposed to believe in you saw it as a punchline? I stopped checking Instagram, paused all new commissions, let messages pile up. I wasn't sad, not exactly. I was tired, not just of them, but of always being the one who had to rise above it, to swallow pride, play peacemaker, or minimize my own success just to avoid being called dramatic. For years, I told myself that one day they'd come around, that I'd make it, and they'd finally see me, accept me. But that Sunday proved something I should have learned a long time ago. Some people don't want to see you succeed unless they can take credit for it. A week passed, then another. I didn't hear from any of them. Not Chloe, not Caleb, not even my mom. It was like I'd just been written out of the family script. A forgotten extra that left the set. And it stung. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. But something strange happened in that silence. Without the constant noise of trying to impress them, trying to measure up, I started hearing myself again. It started small. One morning, I brewed coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened a message I'd been ignoring for days. It was from a man named Walter, who ran a luxury restoration shop in rural Virginia. He'd seen some of my work through a mutual client and wanted to talk about a partnership. I almost deleted it. Then I didn't. I replied with a short message and set up a call for the next afternoon. I figured I'd probably back out, but I didn't. When the call came, Walter turned out to be this calm, kind, older guy in his late 60s with a voice like gravel and stories for days. He'd been in the business for over 30 years and said my work reminded him of when he first started. Attention to detail, passion for history, no shortcuts. He told me he was semi-retiring and looking for someone younger to collaborate with, someone who could take on overflow clients, maybe even help train apprentices in the future. I know it sounds sudden, he said near the end of the call, but good craftsmanship is rare. Passion's even rarer. I don't care what degrees you've got. What I see in your work is someone who gives a damn. That's what matters. I didn't say anything at first because no one had ever put it that way before. That call flipped a switch. Not a loud one, just a soft click, like a light bulb flickering back to life in a dark attic. Over the next few weeks, I started working again. Quietly, steadily. I finished the armoire, shipped it to a client in Savannah, who emailed me a full paragraph about how it made her cry when she saw it in person. I accepted Walter's offer to take on 2 of his clients, and one of them turned out to be this interior designer in Dallas who immediately booked me for more. I started posting again, but not for likes, just to share. Pieces I was proud of, details I loved, stories behind each item. And people responded more than ever before. Comments flooded in, orders stacked up. Even a small YouTube design channel featured my work in a short segment about craftsmen who still do it by hand. And slowly, I started to feel different. Not fixed, not invincible, just steady. There was a moment about a month after the dinner when I caught myself whistling while sanding down a mahogany tabletop. It was this little thing, barely even noticeable, but it stopped me cold because I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. It wasn't until mid-April that I heard from Chloe again. She texted out of the blue, "Ethan, hey, wedding's June 10th. Sending out official invites next week. LMK if you're coming." That was it. No apology, no follow-up, no acknowledgement of what happened, just a quick you in or out message like she was RSVPing to a work event. I stared at the screen for a while. And then I did something I never thought I would. I didn't reply, not right away at least. Instead, I kept working. I finished a set of custom side tables, helped Walter organize a workshop for young designers. I even spoke on a panel at a local design fair. Me, a guy who used to hate public speaking. People came up afterward, asked about my process, complimented my craftsmanship. No one laughed. No one cut me off. It felt real. About a week later, I got the official invitation in the mail. Cream envelope, gold lettering, big cursive names, Chloe and Liam. My name was printed at the bottom, Ethan Blake. No guest, no note, just the RSVP card and a list of expected attire and times. For a second, I almost tossed it. But then I had an idea. A small one. Quiet, but sharp. That same week, I got a call from a producer at a well-known home and lifestyle channel. They were running a new series on small batch artisans and wanted to feature a few restoration experts. Someone had sent them my Instagram page. The producer, Sasha, was direct. "We love your aesthetic. It's rare, thoughtful, authentic. We think you'd be a great fit." We scheduled a video call. She asked me questions. I answered casually. At the end, she smiled and said, "We're also shooting a segment on location at a big wedding this summer, luxury venue, very old school. They're showcasing bespoke design elements throughout the space. Would you be interested in contributing?" I blinked. "A wedding?" She nodded. "Yep. Furniture staging, floral stands, maybe a centerpiece or 2. We put your name in the credits. Could be good exposure." I asked for the date and location. She told me, and I nearly laughed out loud. It was the same venue Chloe had listed on her invite. That was when everything came together. Not revenge, not spite, just clarity. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I finally held the pen and I had a story to write. I RSVP'd, yes, but I didn't tell them how I was coming. And I definitely didn't tell them why. To them, I was still the same joke from dinner, the brother they could forget until it was time for a family photo. The one they'd cut out of the toast, the slideshow, the planning emails. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that while they were busy building a fantasy around Chloe's perfect day, I'd been quietly building something of my own. Something solid, something they couldn't laugh away. And on June 10th, they were finally going to see it, whether they liked it or not. Most people think revenge is loud, that it comes with fireworks, shouting, public breakdowns, or explosive reveals that leave everyone gasping and whispering. Maybe that's how it works in movies. But in real life, the best revenge is quiet, patient, precise. It's not about making a scene, it's about making a point. So when I said yes to Chloe's wedding invite, I didn't do it out of sentimentality. I wasn't hoping they'd change or come to their senses or even apologize for how they treated me. No, I was past all that. I accepted the invitation because I saw an opening, a beautiful, poetic opening. The same family that had spent years treating me like I was less than irrelevant, a footnote in their shiny group photo, was now hosting a high-profile event at a venue where I had just been invited to contribute behind the scenes for a national design series. They had no idea, and I had no intention of telling them yet. The producer, Sasha, followed up with me 2 weeks later. She said the wedding venue had finalized their style brief, vintage romantic with a modern flair. Think hand-carved wood, warm brass tones, floral accents. She asked if I could provide 2 centerpiece console tables, custom podiums for the ceremony, and if possible, a refurbished vintage love seat for the bridal photo area. I replied, absolutely. She responded 5 minutes later. You're a lifesaver, and your work is stunning. We'll make sure your name is on everything. That message stayed open in my inbox for a while. I just kept rereading that line, your name is on everything. They were filming an entire episode around this wedding. The production team would be at the venue for 3 days. Interviews, B-roll, prep, tear down. And my work would be there for every second of it. My tables, my detailing, my craftsmanship, and most importantly, my name, not just on a tag, in the credits, on screen, recognized. The next morning, I got to work harder than I had in months, maybe years. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I didn't post updates online. I didn't even tell Walter, though he noticed my energy had shifted and gave me a quiet thumbs up when I finished sanding a cherrywood base in record time. There was something deeply satisfying about it. Planning something in silence. Not for applause, not for validation, just for me. Every morning I brewed coffee, turned on my workshop lights, and laid out the plans. The centerpiece tables would be reclaimed oak polished to a mirror shine with carved floral motifs along the legs. The podiums would be a dark walnut, smooth and angular, traditional but bold. And the love seat, that was my favorite piece. I found it at an estate sale outside of town. A 1930s French-style couch with a cracked frame and torn velvet. Everyone else walked past it like it was garbage. I saw a masterpiece hiding under the dust. 3 weeks later, it looked like something out of a luxury catalog. Deep green velvet reupholstered by hand. Ornate legs I carved and stained myself. Brass detailing along the backrest. It wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a statement. I imagined Chloe sitting on it for her bridal portraits, and I smiled. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got an unexpected call. Sasha again. Hey, Ethan, she said, upbeat as always. So, bit of an update. We'd love to film a short segment with you on location. Just a 2-minute interview about your process and inspiration. Would you be okay with that? My throat went dry. This was bigger than I'd expected. Yeah, I said, trying not to sound too eager. That's totally fine. Awesome, she replied. We'll film it on Friday morning before setup. Super casual. Just you, your pieces, and a bit of backstory. People love to see the human side of craftsmanship. I hung up and stood there in the middle of my shop, heart racing. This wasn't just a background credit anymore. This was a full feature segment, a spotlight, and it was happening at my sister's wedding. I thought about telling someone. Not my family, obviously, but maybe a friend or Walter or this one client I'd become friends with over email who always asked about my work. But something told me to wait, to keep it mine. Let the reveal happen naturally. If my family had taught me anything, it was how to stay quiet while people talked over you. Now I was using that silence as cover. The day before the wedding, I arrived at the venue with my van packed to the ceiling. I'd wrapped every table, every podium, every corner of that love seat in layers of fabric and foam. No detail left unguarded. The venue was stunning. A lakeside estate turned event space. All sprawling green lawns and tall hedges with stone terraces and high ceilings inside. Picture perfect. The production crew was already there, busy with camera gear and lights. I parked near the back, unloaded, and started setting up while the planner barked orders at florists and caterers. "Are you Ethan?" one of the producers asked, clipboard in hand. I nodded. She smiled. "Sasha said you're the one to watch. They'll film your interview around 11 a.m. tomorrow. Just be ready." Absolutely. I found my assigned spaces and carefully staged the pieces. The tables flanked the main entry to the ceremony area, dressed with floral arrangements that still smelled like morning dew. The podium stood by the altar where Liam would make his vows. And the love seat, oh, the love seat, was placed under a floral arch, front and center in the reception hall, surrounded by soft lights for photo ops. It looked like something out of a wedding magazine, and it was all mine. I stayed late pretending to double-check measurements, but mostly I just wanted to be alone with the space, to watch how people reacted to my work without knowing it was mine. The planner passed by and paused. "These tables are gorgeous," she murmured to herself. One of the camera guys nodded. "It's all custom. The guy's legit." Finally, something not made in a warehouse. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, heart quietly thumping. I didn't step in, didn't say a word, because they'd know soon enough. The morning of the wedding, I arrived early in a clean suit and polished shoes. No over-the-top flair, just enough to blend in. I had a lanyard from the production crew with my name on it, Ethan Blake, artisan, and a time slot for the interview. It felt surreal. I walked past the reception space and spotted my love seat already being used. A group of guests were snapping photos on it, laughing, smiling. None of them knew I'd built it from splinters and rot. I found Sasha by the camera crew and waved. "Perfect timing," she said, leading me to a corner where they'd set up soft lighting and a stool. "We'll start rolling in 5. Just speak from the heart." I did. The interview flowed. I talked about why I got into restoration, what I loved about vintage pieces, how every scar and scratch told a story. I kept it honest, grounded, not trying to impress, just trying to be me. When we wrapped, the crew clapped softly and one of them said, "Man, that was great. You've got a real presence." I nodded, thanked them, and walked off to the side of the garden, just in time to see Chloe arrive. She stepped out of a sleek silver car in a lace-trimmed gown, surrounded by bridesmaids, photographers, and my mom. They didn't see me, but I saw them. I watched as they laughed, posed, and directed people like it was their personal movie set. And then, just as Chloe turned toward the entrance, she saw the tables. Her face tilted slightly. Then she saw the love seat. Her eyes narrowed. She turned to my mom and said something I couldn't hear, but I saw her lips move. Then her brows knit. My mom followed her gaze, looking vaguely puzzled. And that was when the first domino fell. It didn't take long. Around noon, guests started to arrive. People commented on the decor, the custom touches, the way the vintage elements elevated the entire aesthetic. A few even asked where the pieces came from. Then someone pointed out the credits. On a table near the reception entrance, the production crew had placed a neat printed display card, featured artisan Ethan Blake. Furniture design, restoration, and custom woodcraft as seen on channel name S upcoming special, Modern Heirlooms. It was right there, front and center. I saw my mom notice it first. She went still. Then she whispered something to my dad. Caleb looked confused. "Chloe?" She stared at the sign like it had personally insulted her. She turned, scanned the crowd, and finally her eyes found mine. I just smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. The kind you give when you finally stop playing their game and start playing your own. Chloe was the first to approach me. Not immediately. No. She waited until the ceremony had ended, the vows delivered with Pinterest-worthy precision, and guests had been ushered into the reception hall. She'd smiled through the whole thing, tight-lipped, eyes flicking toward me more than once, like she couldn't believe I hadn't vanished into the walls. I'd stayed back close to the production crew, sipping a ginger ale and watching from the sidelines like I was nobody, just another vendor, a ghost. But the moment the crowd settled and the cameras began capturing the staged beauty of the evening, she made her move. She approached with a practiced smile, still in her gown, her train dragging lightly behind her like it cost more than my rent. "Ethan," she said, sweet and sharp like a compliment wrapped in a warning. "Can we talk for a second?" I looked up slowly. "Sure." She walked me toward a quiet corner behind the reception tent. As soon as we were out of sight of the guests and photographers, her smile dropped like a curtain. "What is this?" she hissed. I blinked, feigning ignorance. "The wedding. You know what I mean." Her voice dropped, sharp with panic. "Why are your things all over this venue?" "Things," I echoed, glancing toward the furniture I'd spent weeks restoring. "You mean the centerpiece tables, the podiums, the love seat that every single one of your guests has already posed on?" She crossed her arms. "Don't get smart with me. You're sabotaging my wedding." I laughed once quietly. "Sabotaging? I built half this place, Chloe. If anything, I saved it." She stared at me like I'd grown two heads. "Did you plan this? Did you know the crew would feature your work here?" I met her eyes, calm as a still lake. "They contacted me through a client. I didn't mention your wedding at all. Just accepted the job." It wasn't until they told me the date and venue that I realized who it was for. Her jaw clenched. "I could have said no," I added, "but I didn't, because why should I?" She didn't respond. "And I could have warned you," I continued. "Told you I was involved. But I figured it'd be more fun this way." Her mouth opened, closed. "I'm not here to ruin your day, Chloe," I said, stepping a little closer. "I'm here because I belong here. Because for once, my work is being appreciated, recognized, celebrated. And you know what? You don't get to erase that." She looked around, probably hoping someone would interrupt. No one came. "You told me to lie about what I do," I said, "so I wouldn't sound pathetic. But now everyone at your wedding is fawning over my designs, taking pictures, asking about me, including the wedding planner and 3 guests who've already asked for my card." I leaned in slightly. "So if you're embarrassed, maybe it's not me you're embarrassed about." She stared at me, face unreadable. I turned to leave, but paused. "Oh, and congratulations, by the way. Beautiful ceremony." Then I walked back into the reception hall, leaving her standing in the shadows of her own perfect day. It didn't stop there. See, the funny thing about getting featured on national television during someone else's wedding? People notice. By the time the episode aired a month later, I'd already had 3 new commissions booked. Not from randoms, real names. A design blogger in Miami, a boutique hotel owner in Vermont, a film set decorator in Seattle. Each of them had seen a preview clip the channel posted on their social media highlighting my work and that now famous green velvet love seat. "You've got an eye," the blogger told me. In a story, I didn't disagree. I expanded my workshop, hired an assistant, and even got approached by a publisher about writing a short coffee table book on restoration art and storytelling through furniture. It felt surreal, but not undeserved. The more my name circulated, the more I realized how little I needed the validation I used to chase. Then came the call from my mother. She didn't lead with an apology. That would have required reflection. Instead, she said, "We saw the episode. Very well done. Surprised you didn't mention Chloe or the family at all." I stayed quiet for a second. Then I said, "Why would I?" She huffed. "Well, we're your family. Are you?" I asked, calm. "Because you've treated me more like an embarrassment than a son. And when you had the chance to show up for me, you chose to laugh instead." Her tone shifted. Defensive. "That's not fair, Ethan. You've always been sensitive." "No," I said, "I've always been respectful." "You mistook my silence for weakness." Another pause. Then her voice softened. Your father wants to have a dinner. Get everyone together. Start fresh. I leaned back in my chair, looking around my workshop. My space, my business, my life. I don't think so, I said. What? I'm not interested in starting fresh. I already started over without you, Mom. Ethan. I don't hate you, I said. But I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire just to keep everyone else warm. And then I hung up. The fallout hit slowly. Caleb texted once, some half-hearted message about being impressed, followed by a joke about finally doing something useful. I didn't respond. His wife tagged me on Instagram with a caption like she'd always believed in me. I removed the tag. As for Chloe, radio silence. But word travels. A mutual friend told me her wedding video had been delayed because the couple didn't want to include too much footage of the non-approved furniture, but it was too late. The venue had shared it. The magazine had shared it. Even the local news picked it up when the episode aired. Her wedding may have been her big day, but my name was the one people remembered. A few months later, I got an invitation in the mail. Chloe and Liam were hosting a housewarming party at their new home in the suburbs. Big cursive font, white and gold trim. My name at the bottom again. This time, I tossed it in the trash without reading the rest. I didn't need to show up anymore. I already had, in every living room that watched that episode. In every home that now had a piece of my work in it, in every article that mentioned my name next to words like masterful, authentic, and one to watch. Revenge didn't come with fire and fury. It came with focus, with patience, with knowing that you don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to let your work speak for you. And mine spoke louder than any of them ever did. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your self-respect?